Far too often, LGBTQ plus business owners believe they have to choose between authenticity and being successful. Through these real-life stories, LGBTQ plus listeners aspiring for success can gain valuable insights to navigate their path to being both queer and successful. Hello, everyone. It is me, Hunter J. McNair, your hostess with the mostest, back again for this week's episode of Queer and Successful. This week, I am joined by my good Judy, my good pal, Tyler Elstrom. Now, Tyler is actually a coach, a business coach for ADHD entrepreneurs. He runs a community on Facebook called KW ADHD Agents. He actually used to be my business coach a couple of years ago before he shifted into this new community, this new coaching style. So I hope that you really enjoyed this call because it was great. There were so many takeaways. The people who were able to take part of it really enjoyed it as well. And as always, as a reminder, you can join in on the call every week at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Mondays at successfulcall.com. Now, enjoy the show. Thank you again, Tyler, for being here. And thank you, everyone, for hopping on today. As always, we are joined by an amazing guest and one of my best, or I would call you a best friend, Tyler.
That's awesome. Well, I better. Am I your best or like your fourth best?
I mean, I'll give you third.
Okay.
I'll give you third place. No, if you all don't know, actually, Tyler and I actually coached together for a while. So Tyler was my business coach for a bit, and we had a really great time. And I'm super excited to have you. You are a powerhouse, to say the least, right? I mean, you know, powerhouses usually like to flock together. And you have been leading the ADHD agent community for how long has it been now?
The free one or the paid one?
Either one.
So I have a free one and a free one. We have two Facebook groups. So if you're not in them, KW ADHD is one. That's a big one. And then ADHD Real Estate Mastermind. So that's for anyone not with KW. So check those out. I'm sure we can get the links in the chat at some point. So that's been since August of 2023, I believe. Let's see. It's been about a year and a half. So maybe not quite.
Yeah.
Yeah, good question. I need to go back. So it's been a little over a year and a half, I believe. And so I've got the free groups that we do. We do a free call every Tuesday. And then the paid group, which is essentially ADHD friendly real estate training that I go to the top real estate trainers in the industry and we make them ADHD friendly instead of all day sitting under fluorescent lights. And that's been really cool. And we're going to have you on 1 month. And that started at the end of 2024. And we've got, I think, 70 people, 70 agents in that. That's been really fun. So
I was so lucky. I was so lucky to have me hop on and teach some of your people because I was telling you after, like, they're so nice. Everyone's been so kind and sweet and very, very generous. And yeah, so thank you again for being here, kind of diving in with me today on everything. And I want to really kind of dive in and just ask, like, what really inspired you to like specialize in this?
Yeah, that's a big question. Well, I mean, just kind of going back to it, if people don't know my bio, I had a business partner and we had a team that was ranked 86 in the world for units. We were doing over 300 units back in 2015. And I had ADHD, didn't really know that's what it was. Like, you think it's just like a focus issue. And I just felt like imposter syndrome and like, am I ever going to feel like good enough? And then I was like hiding things about myself, and masking certain traits and just like low self-esteem. And even though I had these huge numbers. And so I got asked to do a talk at a big event, or Cal Williams event in Mega Camp in Austin, and like wrote it the day before. And it was, how to hack your ADHD. And it was across from the convention center. It wasn't even on the website. And just did it, and it was huge. And I was told it was the most liked and favorite event in the app. And so there were just so many incredible people that related. I cried because it was super healing for me, because I felt like, all this stuff was wrong with me. So to be in a room of people that felt the same way and had the same gifts and then some of the same challenges. And so then the Facebook group started, and that's almost, I don't know, I think we're close to 5,000 members in that. And yeah, so it's been really healing for me too, and fun, and that's how it started. And it's like the most. I mean, I would rather do this than sell 300 houses. It's just so rewarding. Not that that's not a great job. It's just, this is a dream. So
It's different, right? It's
yeah,
adjacent. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
It's obviously been really cool seeing you flourish in it. And there's just so much more. You just have so much more fun doing things that you're passionate about, like you're saying, right?
totally,
And
totally.
everyone who takes part in what you do definitely feels that energy from you. And you're creating spaces for people to exist within them, which is really powerful. That's something I say to myself as well as an affirmation. Just to
Okay,
keep us going, right? And I think a lot of people would kind of hide from an ADHD diagnosis, especially in like business, right? Same thing as like people who want to be queer and successful, right? Like they might hide from leaning into, I guess you could call a niche, or really what I would like to say is our superpower, right? And ADHD really is a superpower when you can harness it. So how have you really, how do you think you've used it as a strength in business?
yeah. Well, with ADHD, there are quite a few gifts, and that was something as an agent, right? I mean, we were doing 300 sales a year when I was like 26, and the I literally couldn't. I also, so besides ADHD, I also am slightly on the autism spectrum. I've got like OCD, I have PTSD, I got like just the letter collection. And so some of the stuff that I think some people who maybe just have ADHD can force themselves to do, I literally couldn't, right? Like we have what's called executive dysfunction. And so like the frontal lobe just doesn't engage in the same way. There's less dopamine, which is like the fuel to do things, right? I couldn't. So I had to find different ways to work with my brain, because also like I lock on with a goal, and I want it, right? And so I think in order, I had to find like the easy way to work with my brain to do it. And I think that's a neat thing that I can teach then. And what I did is, and I'll tell you, I mean, I played with dopamine, right? And so I'd go for the path of least resistance, because we have lower levels of dopamine with ADHD, and dopamine is the fuel to go to do the thing. And so there's an acronym actually, and it's called INCUP. And INCUP, it's 5 letters, and it stands for the 5 things that create dopamine in an ADHD brain. So INCUP stands for interesting, new, challenging, urgent, and passion. So if it's
Mhm.
interesting, new, challenging, urgent, and passion, we're going to get this flood of dopamine. And we're actually, and actually, what can happen if you think about dopamine with ADHD, it's like we don't get a lot or we get a bunch, which is why we also can lock onto something and focus on it for like 4 or 5 hours. So that like dopamine gate, I think of it like a drawbridge or something. It's kind of finicky. So sometimes it's just shut, and it's like, no, you can't have it. You can't do the laundry. You can't finish that email. You can't. You have to sit on this couch and scroll on your phone. Or it's like, oh, here you go. Here, you can focus on this thing for like 6 hours in a row and not eat and not go to the bathroom. And it's nighttime already. And you don't even know what time it is. Right. So I leaned into that. And I would just, it's like, if I'd find ways to make it interesting, I'd switch it up all the time. I'd always find a way to make a challenge urgent, and then I'd tie it to a passion. So then actually, I was able to show up at a really high level and have this flood of dopamine, and people couldn't touch me. A lot of agents couldn't, because how do you compete with never-ending dopamine, right? I mean,
Right. Yeah. I mean, you found a way to kind of gamify things, right? Like just keep that dopamine.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember us talking about that a lot back in the day. Because if you all don't know, myself have ADHD, and it's always fascinating to hear you talk about things, especially with dopamine, because as we have talked about in the past, like people are like, how do you do so much? I'm like, because I'm bored if I'm not. Like I'm just like I need to have so many things going on. And even like I think Friday, like I had this big thing, and Tyler, you know how I am. Like, give me a deadline, I'll get it knocked out the day before,
Right.
and like,
Yeah.
knock it out in like 10 hours, right? But it's like that's what I need is like that, like straight work through hyper
Urgency.
focus. Yeah, the urgency of it is like the only thing that's interesting, and otherwise it's not that interesting. What are some of the strategies? Like, someone's like, okay, great. You need to up our dopamine, like, but I'm struggling like right now. Like, what are usually like the first things that you tell people to do when they're just like, kind of a deer in headlights, if you may?
Would you be able to give me like a little bit more context, like an example or
Yeah. So say like someone realizes or, is diagnosed with ADHD, they're struggling to complete tasks or get things done. They're completely new to the world of ADHD. What are kind of the first few things that you say, hey, I think you should start with this?
Got it. Okay. Okay, so there's the autism you'll see in a little bit when a question's broad, sometimes with autism. And this is like an example of to ask for what you need. I
Yeah.
like to do that. I like to be visible and represent that. Because if a question's really broad, sometimes with autism, we have well, people with ADHD have 10 times the amount of thoughts.
Mhm.
And that's neurodivergence. And so I just thought of 50 different ways I could take that. So that's why I
Well,
asked
and
for
I'm always gonna, well,
yeah.
I'm always gonna ask a question where I'm assuming you've read my mind. So,
No, no, and no, no. That was a great question. And you gave me context too. And so if somebody's just finding out a diagnosis, I mean, I'll start off like if you want the easy button, medicine's an easy button, and I know that's kind of a controversial thing. For some people, it changed their life completely. For other people, it's they don't want to do it, and that's fine. You can look at other ways. But what they've shown, just if it's a fear for people, there's so much out there stigma around that. And what it does, if you find the right one, it can basically our brains are chronically understimulated, which is why we do so well under pressure and stress and last minute. So it engages the brain, and so you might not have some of the same difficulties. So that is one option, and that's if somebody's really struggling, right? If it's debilitating, go check that out. And there's 31 studies by that Dr. Russell Barkley reviewed that show it can actually sometimes you can go off medicine when you're on it for a little bit because it can create pathways in the brain to circumvent some of our traits. So I just like to throw that out there because there's such stigma out there. So that's one thing. The other thing is that income. So if you're really struggling, the key is to get your business and your life into income. So let's take lead generation for whatever business you're in. It's like if you're just struggling so bad to call a certain list and do certain scripts and be on the phone every day, and there's such this resistance. Because I'm a coach, right? I've done over 10,000 one-on-one calls over the last 7 years with ADHD agents. It's like, what if you didn't have to do it that way? Like, so pay attention when there's a lot of resistance. Do you have to do it that way? Is it because somebody told you to, or can you do it a different way? I have clients that they would die if they just sit. They would never do it. They wouldn't be in business. Yet they can go walk around to garage sales every weekend and have a blast and get a listing. So a lot of the stuff out there is meant for neurotypical brains, not neurodivergent, where they need that hard rigidity. They need that structure. They need you to, here's the script. We don't need to do that because our brains are wired differently.
Right.
We're more creative. We have 10 times the amount of thoughts as someone else. We're more intuitive. We have higher conversion rates. So there's a lot more. So I would say, yeah, that's the first thing is pay attention to where there's a lot of resistance and see if you can do it a different way. If you have to do it that way, that's where we might even bring in dopamine. So can you turn on music while you do it? Can you set a timer? Can you set a reward? Can you body double? Can you have somebody come sit with you while you do it to create urgency? Can you tie it to a passion? So what you'll notice as we talk, it's not discipline and it's not force and it's not shame and it's not harshness. Because if harshness worked, you would already be there already, right? So it's not going to work. Use tools. Don't beat yourself up because it sucks. Like it's not a fun way to live. You
Well,
know?
and I think even if you weren't neurodivergent, I think having that type of self-awareness, right? Having some type of self-awareness of like what works for you and what doesn't transcends all of it, right? And I think the coupling, right? It's kind of what we're leaning into. It's like I actually do the same thing. I don't lead gen with quietness. Like I have to have like words usually because I want to like learn things while I'm working, which is really weird. But it's my dopamine hit. And so it's fascinating the things that you that when you just acknowledge that you are different and that you are wired differently, how much it opens up the doors to newer opportunities.
Mhm.
What would you say are some unique traits or superpowers? You mentioned you've alluded to some, but what are some other
Mhm.
superpowers of people who have ADHD?
Oh, there's so many. So like I said, one of the gifts are like the 10 times the amount of thoughts. So that's a really big one. So when you look at like an entrepreneur, right? So I'm gonna list 10. I just pulled up my list to make sure I hit every single one. So when you think of an entrepreneur, I want you to think this could be a list for an entrepreneur or someone with ADHD, right? So high self-awareness, that's number one. And sometimes we can be self-conscious, right, or perfectionist, or high empathy. And then also because I'm a numbers guy, and we have double the conversion rate. So the average agent takes 120 conversations for one closing. An ADHD agent over the last 7 years takes 60. So 60 conversations. So with the self-awareness and emotional intelligence, it takes us half the amount of activities for the same amount of closings. So self-awareness is one. Abundance of thoughts, right? Tons of ideas. You can tell that I talk faster. I do that when I'm with more of a neurodivergent crowd because we process so quickly. Whereas if I go do it for someone else, sometimes I talk too fast. But our crew can really, it's sometimes people turn on the speed of things 2x on YouTube or on the book. So we think really fast, we process fast. Number three, creativity. We see things differently, outside the box thinking. Four, energy and passion. Can you tell? Oh my gosh, like this is awesome, right? Five, hyper focus. That's that dopamine where we lock in and can keep going. That's hard to compete with. Number six is generosity and empathy. So we're very giving, and do really well when you tie lead gen to like a passion or a charity or a cause, and just we care. Number seven, in like intuitive and sensitive, so we can pick up on things. They show that people who are neurodivergent actually take in more data, and more information, which is why we can get overstimulated easier. Calm under pressure. We're good with risk tolerance and courage. Very authentic. So I mean, I could just keep going, but you get the. I mean, talk about a recipe for an entrepreneur, right?
I mean, it's super. Yeah, there's so much to it. And it's fascinating as you mentioned the like the how you speed up and you start talking like almost over people. Me and you do that all the time. Like I don't know if I realize it in it and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm going like super fast with Tyler because we're just on that same wavelength."
Yeah,
And
it's a different call.
yeah, and I think the superpowers that you do have when you think faster, I had no idea that we could lead generate half the time. Like my life just got so much easier.
Yeah, it's true. It's so true. It's so true. I
I
couldn't
mean,
believe it. I mean, I
yeah.
had clients that take 30 conversation. I mean, that's 60 is the average. I've had people that take 30, and I'm like, do you know how crazy this conversion rate is? You're literally doing a fourth, 25% of the calls and getting the same amount of closings. That's
Well,
a
and I think
gift for sure.
even the thing about empathy, right? Where it's like we have more empathy and we have this more natural tendency to go towards that also makes sense for me too, because I find that happens more often than not, where I feel like I'm more in touch with, I guess, you have a higher emotional intelligence
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
than not, right? And that really is a good thing to have when you're talking about business for sure. Um, you know, how do you think that you're managing time? Because that obviously is a sore topic in, I guess, this kind of world, right? Time management. It's a scary word. How do you coach your clients to effectively manage their schedules and deadlines?
Great question. So there's something called time blindness that we have, and
Mhm.
that like we see time and we observe time differently. And time blindness, what that is we, and when I say we have trouble, we're adapting to a world that's not built for us. And so when I talk about challenges and trouble and things like that, what I really mean behind the scenes is we're navigating a world that's not built for us, so we're having to adapt versus like something's wrong with us. And it is a challenge because we're in average population is 3 to 10% that has ADHD, and that's it. So it's the majority that don't. So time blindness is, we see time differently, and we have trouble gauging how long something might take or how long it's been. And we can also just like time doesn't exist, and that's where that hyper focus is. So it's this beautiful, amazing thing where we can be so present. People love being around us, and we have trouble gauging time. So One of the things that's really important with ADHD in general is we do really well with structure. However, if it's too rigid, we can rebel. So you need to find that balance, and each person's going to be different. I have clients who can time block and can be rigid, and it's helpful. I have other ones that they would hate their life and quit real estate. So if you've tried, normal time blocking over and over again for a couple of years, chances are, unless you're trying it a different way, you might want to shift how you're doing it, or you might want to ease up a little bit. So with time, for some people, it might be that they time block up until noon and the rest is open. We need to give our brains time to play. Other people, they time block in just lead generation and that's it. And the rest is a task list that they can do in the order they want and has to be done by the end of the day. Or we have, people that will fluctuate and might go to different schedules. So I think that if you hate your life and you hate your job, you don't have to do it super rigid. And then this is just a side note for time blindness. Because we have trouble gauging how long something's going to take, a good tool is to double it. So if I'm going to go to dinner after this and I think, I need to go, finish some emails and then take the dogs for a walk and shower and then go to dinner, it'll probably take an hour. I need to say, no, buddy, it's probably going to take 2 hours, like to drive there too. I can get ready. I can get there in 30 minutes. No, you probably need more time. So I always double it. It's kind of like the gauge is a little off, and then you're not beating yourself up for being late all the time. So
How do you suggest people keep out distractions when we are trying to go into that hyper focused mode? Because I haven't see that time blindness kicks in for me. Because like it takes me a minute to get into that hyper focus, but when I'm in that hyper focus, I'm there for like 7 hours
yeah,
and
yeah.
I don't even realize it, right?
Mhm.
Once you're in the hyper focus, I've gotten better about keeping distractions away. Like, what are some tips and tools to keeping distractions out of your time block space, your
Yeah.
time managed space?
So remember how I said we have 10 times the amount of thoughts as someone without
Mhm.
ADHD? And that's like studies show that. And so if you have your phone ring, you're going to have 10 times the amount of thoughts as that. If you're going to have notifications pop up, if you got dogs barking, if you've got the fans too loud, if you're in an office where you hear sound muffled through the wall, we're going to have 10 times the amount of thoughts. So you hear sound muffled, and we're going to say, oh man, I wish these walls were a little bit more thick. And why do they talk so loud? And maybe I'm too sensitive. And, wait a second, why did my mom tell me I was too sensitive when I was little? Am I too, like we're going on these trains. And so for us, especially, it's so important to embrace how our brains work, and then also put, I always think of bowling where, when you're a kid and they put the things in the lanes, the bumpers.
Yeah.
We want to help. We don't want to just leave these like gutters open. Set yourself up for success. And so get noise canceling headphones, build your bunker. Sometimes we can struggle with boundaries or perfectionism. Make sure that those boundaries are clear to the people around you. And then what I'd say too is transition. So we can struggle sometimes with task switching or transitions. And so you might have to get into that hyper focus, you might have a routine that transitions you from whatever you're into that, whether it's personal life to business, whether it's emails to phone, something like that, because you're going to get into it faster, some kind of transitional plan. But yeah, protect your space and time, and don't expect discipline to stop you. Like, man, why did I lose focus again? What's wrong with me? That's not going to work.
Yeah, that transitional period is really tough for myself, to be honest. Like if
Yeah,
I have something at 1 o'clock that ends at 1 and I have something at 4, I am like, what do I do for these 3 hours? It's very difficult for me. And I know our friend Molly DeMatos does a lot of hyper time blocking because that works for her so that she kind of keeps
yeah,
that flow and kind of keeps that distraction from going or from happening. But I would say it's something that we have to always we have to be conscious of, and
yeah.
that's also for any business owner. um what do you think, like if you're working with someone, let's say you have a client, or let's say you have a business partner or whomever that you're working with who has ADHD, and you're wanting to be more inclusive to someone who has ADHD, what are some of the things that we should be mindful of?
Um, Shame is a big thing, especially like adult, like late diagnosed. I've said this on my free calls, but I mean they show that ADHD kids get 20,000 more negative messages about their behavior by the age of 8. right? 20,000 more negative, like, why are you late? Why did you forget this? Why did you do your homework? Why did you forget? Why weren't you listening when I said that? So shame is a really big thing. And a lot of us can have like very sensitive to criticism and rejection. And at the same time, when you saw the gifts, like we have creative ideas, we can hyper focus, we care about people. So most people do well with encouragement and clarity on things and a little bit of grace, because we can also be really loyal. So if you're working with somebody who has ADHD and there's a little mistake, don't beat them up, or think that it was personal, and then ask for what kind of support. But when an ADHD person, I know for me, I was been with most jobs like 7 years in a row when they're friendly to me, and I'll work my butt off just to do that. So that's what I would say is don't shame and don't take it personal if there's certain things, and also make sure they're in their joy zone. So if I've got somebody with ADHD and I'm making them do stuff that's not interesting, new, challenging, urgent, and passion, like they're not going to do well, and that's maybe for 2 months, but then they're going to struggle. So
Yeah.
don't ask them to do stuff that doesn't produce dopamine, and then be surprised when it's hard.
Well, we all should be focusing on what sparks joy for us.
Agreed. Agreed.
We all should be focusing on what sparks joy for us. I know that also you are very organized, and I'm like, how is he so organized? You have
Thank you.
these like amazing systems in place and these amazing visual things. How have you really used ADHD to help you do that? Because I mean, I can't sometimes put it on paper. Like all that's like my team knows like all these great ideas are in my head and I'm very spatial visualization. Like I've got a lot of that. But then translating it the way that you've done that is really amazing. How have you been able to accomplish that? Or how do you suggest that people who are trying to do that, like take these big thoughts in their heads and put them on paper, can achieve that?
Well, and that's what you said is get it out of your head. So
Mm,
sometimes with our working memory, it works differently. We prune a lot more, so we don't hold as much in our head, and we can have memory. But the memory stuff that we have is different than cognitive decline. Just FYI. So I do like almost everything on paper. I'm not trying to task my brain to hold it. So I have brain dump sheets that I put everything on, and then our brains also can have trouble organically prioritizing, where everything feels urgent and everything has to be done now. And that's part of the time blindness. We see time as now or not now. So it's
yeah.
like, oh, do I need to do it now? I'll do it now. I don't need to do it. Okay, I'm gonna forget about it forever. So get lists and like understand your brain, and then prioritize. So I get everything on a sheet. And we're talking about systems, right? If I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm gonna just dump all the things that are all the pain points going on that need a system, and then I'm going to organize those, and then I'm going to go to that first one. I'm going to shut out everything else, and then I'm going to stay with that and hyper focus until it's figured out and streamlined, so I don't have to touch it again. So yeah, that's it. It's kind of simple, but yeah.
Yeah, it's simple, not easy. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's always the caveat. Simple, just not easy. Yeah, I mean it really is a thing where I have to do it now or it like doesn't happen. That
Mm-hmm.
is always a struggle. And it is where it's like I have a to-do list, and sometimes it's hard to like distinguish between a to-do list and a success list. Right? That's truly what we're kind of talking about here, where it's like
Mm-hmm.
figuring out how to prioritize what needs to be done. Where do you think that most ADHD professionals are struggling? Like, what is the more common thing that you see ADHD professionals struggling with?
Not believing himself. I can answer that very quickly. Not
Mm,
like not having confidence. The ideas that a lot of all of you have are so good, and what happens a lot of times is that we're so coachable, like too coachable. I see that all the time, and so you try to do it the ways that are harder instead of listening to that little voice in your head that's like, this doesn't resonate, this doesn't feel true. It's like, and that's what I would say is stop being so coachable, and trust your gut and practice for a week. Do it your way for a week, because it
yeah.
gets like just burned in our brains to like follow the model and copy what this person who did this big stuff did. And yet what I've seen coaching is a lot of times we unpack that stuff. So you want to understand the models and you want to understand why you're deviating from them. But I'll get people that are like, I'm uncoachable. I've been through 3 or 4 coaches. They're the best coaches. They helped all my friends. What's wrong with me? And it's because they kept being pushed to do it a way that wasn't working with their brain. And so what would work, and we do it that way, and boom, they double their business, in 6 months. So trust yourself, and it's not an ego thing. It doesn't mean you know better, but experiment. Stop trying to climb a tree when you're supposed to swim and you're a fish.
Right, right. Yeah. I mean, it's so funny. I had my first business coach years ago, like back in, oh Lord, I've been doing this for 10 years. So y'all can do your own math. Very long ago, I was like, I'm not a cold caller. I'm not like, I'm a very, like, I need to communicate. I need to like, meet people, talk to people, be in front of people, etc. And she was like, oh, well, let's have you cold calling. And I'm like, that's literally what I just said I'm not going to do. And I think you definitely have to be soft and firm on your boundaries for what you're willing to do or not do. Um, and be respectful of your boundaries there. Someone mentioned, obviously, their coach said it to do it their way, to do it like their own personal way that they'd like to do it. And I think that's true. I think you have to find joy in what you're doing. And you mentioned earlier imposter syndrome,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Yeah. And that probably plays into this feeling of like the self-doubt that you mentioned, right?
Mhm.
What type of imposter syndrome like do you usually find we have or people with ADHD have?
It's great. I just did a call on this a couple
Yeah.
of weeks ago. So ADHDcall.com. If you want to go there, you can sign up, and then you can be on the free calls every week. And just so this was a big one, and a lot of people requested. So with imposter syndrome, it's extremely common with us, and it's like we can be really really hard on ourselves, and sometimes when we succeed, like it's luck, or we don't deserve it. We can have self-worth stuff, or we can think in all or nothing thinking. That's really common with ADHD, of like, or just never celebrating wins, right? Some of us who have gone undiagnosed, the way that we got through life is by harshness, because when we have harshness, it creates cortisol. It's a stress hormone, which creates dopamine. So if you don't understand what's going on, and we might have learned this from our parents, because there's a 50% chance your parents have it, that's the stats, and they white knuckled it through life through harshness, and then you've got that harshness, which is the thing that creates dopamine, and so now you live a life of harshness, and it's hard. So I think with imposter syndrome, there's this belief like I got to try harder because I'm not good enough, or I'm going to fall short, or something like that. And so when you learn your brain, you can unpack a little bit of that, and yeah, just come at it from a different motivational space, I guess.
Well,
So
and
yeah,
you said it perfectly, where it's this all or nothing, and that meaning like it's either perfect or it's in shambles, right? Like it's
yeah,
you
yeah,
can't
yeah.
find the happy in between and be comfortable with it being at an 8 out of 10, right? And I've
Right.
told
That's a
I
great one. Yep, yep.
yeah, I've been saying more recently that a piece of advice I got that was very great was that it's okay if it's done at an 8 and not a 10, right? Because we push ourselves to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be perfect. We want
Mhm.
that, but it doesn't need to be that.
Go for good enough, and that's another really good point, is the perfectionism. And some of that, we do what's called masking, because our symptoms show up. We might be a little bit too hyperactive, we might be fidgety in the chair because our brains are bored, they're trying to help us. So we learn early on that we've got to mask who we are to not get in trouble. So then we have this belief, who I am is not good enough, I have to hide parts of who I am because I'm going to get in trouble. That's imposter syndrome right there. And then we have this perfectionism where we're harsh on ourselves, and so we don't celebrate wins, and we think we're very critical of ourselves. So when we do win, it's like, ooh, but this wasn't good enough. This wasn't good enough. This, because it's been a survival technique up to this point. You don't have to do that anymore. You're an adult. So those old coping skills can go away once you learn how to work with your brain versus the cortisol, stress, dopamine triad.
Yeah. No, I know that relates to people on this call. I mean, I know I have someone on here I know specifically who works for me who's probably like, oh yeah, that's me right now. Perfectionism, wants to be perfect, wants to have everything correct. And you'll kind of learn that there's some beauty in the chaos, once you kind of embrace it. It is just tough though. It's very tough. Because it is difficult, what are some self-care routines that people with ADHD should be doing?
That's so good. So, like special interests are really important.
Mm.
You need to make time to do things that give you dopamine, like fun things, hobbies. Give your brain time to free flow. Think of discipline as like a muscle, and our muscle is a little bit weaker. However, we have the hyper focus ability. So, if you feel like constantly you're burned out and you can't do something, it's because that muscle needs to rest. So have a day where you get takeout and you don't clean up and you don't do what you're supposed to do, and you literally just float and binge watch the movies, or go golf or go do Zumba or whatever that is. So that's one thing I would say. And self compassion is like the key to so much of this, and it's so hard for us as well. Because if you're struggling, right, like curiosity and self compassion are going to get you through just about anything. So if you're just beating yourself because you can't do something, and you pause and you say, wow, this is really hard. I'm really stuck. Like, I feel like compassion for myself, and I wonder what's going on. And you just sit with it and get curious, you will bust through so much instead of this forcing thing. And something else you can do as well is imagine yourself as a kid, or if you have a kid, whether it's you or someone else, of like, what would you say to a kid if they were sitting on the couch for 3 hours trying to force themselves to get up and do the laundry and they couldn't? What would you say? You wouldn't be like, wow, you're lazy. Like, why didn't you do the laundry? You might be like, wow, like this is really hard for you, and we don't know why, and that's okay. What do you need right now? Or like, hey, let's do the first step, and that's it. And you come back to the couch. I'm going to cheer for you. So the encouragement is really what we need, and it's like sometimes the hardest thing for us to do for ourselves. So that's what I would say, because that's going to fall in alignment with the self-care and everything as well.
Yeah, that encouragement, it's hard because we have to, I think we need to be intentional about having people in our world to encourage us, period. Like, but it also needs to start with yourself for sure. Definitely needs to start with yourself. I wrote down some of the things you said. One of them being, take a break, go out and just, go golfing. I don't golf because I'm very gay,
I don't
but
either. I don't do Zumba or golf.
right, right. I was like,
Somebody here might.
okay.
Sounds relaxing.
Yeah, so it sounds relaxing. It's just like fishing. I saw people fishing
Too
the
slow
other,
for me.
and I
Don't.
was like, are you a fish?
I
Do
mean,
you,
kind of, but it's like it's slow for me. I skateboard on half pipes. Like,
yeah, see, that's interesting. Okay,
go
now I'm getting,
skateboard on a half pipe. It's fine.
yeah, yeah, yeah. See, I need that like adrenaline stuff. But what's fascinating is like I was away for like a week, and I kind of let my mind reset. And I think that we're programmed to just go, 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 go. That when we actually are forced, and when we force ourselves, I was kind of forced because I was with my mother-in-law. That's a whole other story. When you're forced into a situation where you have to relax and let your brain slow down, you come out of it and you're like, oh, like I really have been working a muscle very hard, and I needed that. But you don't have the self-regulation to understand you need it until often it's too late and you're burnt out, which happens to too many of us. The self-compassion thing, I mean, what are some of the ways? I mean, do you do affirmations? You hear me say a lot that I do affirmations.
So I used to do them very formally. Now, I mean, sometimes when I need it, I think that because I worked in mental health before too, and I've studied positive psychology. So I would say I don't do them at a set time and have them written down. And I've really trained my brain pretty much to do them regularly, especially when I do something wrong. It's like I've trained my brain to do the opposite, or to say oops, or to have compassion. So there are times yeah. So I would say yes, and not every morning at 9 a.m. Like
Yeah.
sometimes, yeah, yeah,
Well,
totally.
you know what? Do you know what I've been doing with my affirmations?
What's that?
I've been giving them to other people.
Oh,
So that's
interesting.
how I kind of gamified and made it something that's more in line with feeling not so like self righteous, I guess. Like I don't ever, I want to, so I basically like, I'm like, okay, this is my affirmation. Who can I give this affirmation to? Who can
That's
I also tell them? Is that,
that's
yeah,
really, yeah, that's so neat. And here's the other thing I'll say about affirmations too, is they have to be authentic. So I think some of us have tried affirmations. I realize that, and it's like this raw, I'm the best salesperson in the world, or I'm this. And if something's not authentic, a lot of us just can't do it. Like with neurodivergence, I say we have a really good bullshit detector. I hope it's okay to say that on here. And
that's
so
fine.
it's think of it more as um, you're you're putting up a narrative of how you see yourself, or you're shifting the perception of the story you have about yourself versus some rah thing that's going to change you in 1 minute. Because I get overstimulated sometimes. If it's too much, it feels like it gives me anxiety. Except if my affirmations might look like, I'm really happy with how hard I'm trying every day, or I'm proud of myself for what I've done so far, or I trust that I'm going to make the right decisions this week because I know that's true. So I'm shifting my trust in myself, or that people do find value in what I do, versus like I'm going to be the top speaker in the world, which you can. It's just that stuff felt really extreme and wasn't sustainable for me, and it
Yeah.
was like kind of overwhelming. I don't know.
Mm.
It's like a gentle nudge to keep shifting how I see myself.
Well, and I think the power of affirmations, and we might want to not use the formal word or phrase affirmation since I try to reframe it myself as well. But I think that it's also okay to let affirmations go when they no longer serve you or you move on from them. Like back when I was a new agent, I used one that was when people meet me and talk to me, they know they want to work with me. Said that long enough to myself, but guess what? I didn't really mean it anymore. I moved on from that. And now like shifting into this era of, it feels kind of like icky to like, give myself all the flowers. Like I want to see success in other people and acknowledge them and give them things that I should be saying to myself more. And that's
Mhm.
kind of what I've been doing with that, gifting my affirmations to other people, as kind of either like a let going of it or like a self affirmation. It's been interesting. I think that I'm going to start figuring out how to word that and tell people how to do that because I think it's been a fun trial of error for me, or a trial run for me, I should say. You,
I think that's cool. Yeah, the
yeah,
gift thing, that's really cool. Yeah, what were you gonna
yeah.
say?
Well, and you're relating to people more, like you're seeing a part of yourself in someone and you're just connecting on a different level with someone. And it's also really nice. It's just nice to like be nice to people. And
Yeah,
that actually gives me dopamine, as well. Now, I know that you've discussed a lot of ADHD strategies, and in sharing your expertise on varying platforms, do you think it's like, you've been doing this ADHD specific community now for going on 2 years. How has it really like impacted or shifted your coaching practices? I mean, you were focusing on ADHD clients for a while, but has it changed? Has it kind of changed your perspective on things?
on like who I coach or how I
Yeah, like,
coach.
or how you coach, or do you feel like you've, opened up into a new era of your coaching ability?
That's a great. Yeah, I think that and it's interesting because I've coached celebrities as well. I've had people of all walks of life, people I went to high school with. I've just realized how big of a thing this is and how little it's talked about. And a lot of times when you read about stuff, it's either like a disorder, right? It's like clinical when you look for resources, and it's this diagnosis, or it's this superpower, right? And it's kind of this like toxic achievement, toxic positivity, and it invalidates the hard stuff. But we also don't want to look at it as a disorder because it's this really amazing, beautiful adaptation, which some people think it's a adaptation to move our society along. Like Albert Einstein had ADHD and autism and dyslexia, and look what he did. So it's just affirmed, and I'm getting goosebumps. You can't see, but it's just affirmed more and more how incredible and how different every single neurodivergent person is, and that a lot of us have the same things. That's what blew me away. Is when I got into it, and it was like, oh my gosh, like we're all experiencing a lot of the same thing, and so community is really important. And then what I've really shifted to even more so in my coaching is self empowerment, because what I've found is because of our ideas and the way we see stuff, it's not that you need someone to tell you what to do. You might need somebody to verbal process with who can pick out patterns, but is believing in yourself more, like empowering more. And so that's been the goal with that, is to go with what works with the brain versus here's the model, you have to do it this way. And then we get growth a lot faster than trying to put it in a box. So yeah, I think just appreciating people's brains and working with them and asking the right questions to pull that out versus here's the model, do it, and let me hold you accountable to pushing through this model that might not be right.
Right, because I mean, ADHD doesn't appear in everyone the exact same way.
Right, right,
Um,
right. Totally.
I know that for me, it's a lot of the dopamine thing where I'm like, I constantly crave new, fresh, bold, big, big ventures. not to the my team doesn't love that, but where I'm like, let's do this. But it appears differently for everyone, so I'm sure it really has exposed you to different variations of how people's ADHD show up.
Mhm.
And that's been really empowering, I'm sure as well. What
Yeah.
are, I mean, what are the next big things that you're thinking that you're going to be doing in the ADHD community? What are your big things coming up?
Yeah. So we've got, and I can put these in there. I mean, just getting the resources out there because there's about 2 million realtors that are licensed with NAR. And
Mhm.
the reports we're getting from leadership, it's probably about half of agents have it. It's an industry. And then I've had lenders reach out, I've had appraisers, I've had entrepreneurs. And so the goal for me is just to get as many resources as possible because our groups are what, maybe like 5,000. And yet, if we look at, 2 million licensed realtors, half have ADHD. There's a million agents out there, and almost all of them, like 99%, might think something's wrong with them or don't even know that's what it is. So that's my mission is like how to get resources out. It's not even about building a business, except sometimes I have to do some stuff that's a business to keep
About.
going. But that's my goal. It's just until every single agent has community, like it's so I don't know, it keeps you up at night. Especially women. That's like a big thing for me. 76% of our members are women, and the average age is about mid 40. And almost every single one was late diagnosed and thought something was wrong with them. And like, why did I forget this? And there's just such shame. And so, this is just like my huge passion in coaching is to take this incredible human being who thinks something's wrong with her, that they're falling short, and then help them. I'm going to get teary eyed, but just like help them see how powerful they are. Um, and like then see what they do. It's so rewarding to see like, and I mean men too, but like women, I just think they're very powerful, um, and that's just like really fulfilling to me to see them step into to community and like see how incredible they are, and to be able to like be part of that journey and facilitate that. And so men as well, I just find that with ADHD, especially if it's an attentive type, which is more common in women, it often goes way more undiagnosed,
Mhm.
and like a lot of women feel alone. Like we had 5 women since I started this that said they were thinking of taking their life until they found the group. Um,
Wow.
and I had an 85-year-old woman who messaged me and said the group took 85 years of shame off her shoulders by finding it. So that's, wherever the need is, that's where we'll be. So I have the paid group. I'm getting more education on social media and doing reels and learning about that, to get that information out there. So it's just to help. I mean, that's to get exposure, to help people. That's what matters the most.
You are creating spaces for people to exist within them, Tyler.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I got a question in the chat. Really good question.
Well,
So,
we're going to wrap up and I'll actually move into Q&A if that
oh, okay,
works.
okay,
Everyone,
yeah,
you're listening.
go ahead.
So I really appreciate you sharing everything with us today. And ADHD is also common in the queer space. So I appreciate you being here and taking part of the Queer and Successful call. So thank you so much, Tyler. It's always
Yeah,
amazing.
absolutely.
Thanks for listening today, friends. If you enjoyed this call, do not forget to join Queer and Successful, the community on Facebook, as well as register to participate in these calls live every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern at successfulcall.com. See you next time. Bye.